always wondered this. Did they have body cams on? Because that was a complete and utter lie.
Dude, I don't know. I never have been in trouble, so I wasn't looking for what should have been obvious. I'm just like, what the crap's going on here?
But who comes with 10 cops and a SWAT team?
Yeah.
To a domestic disturbance call when it's a lie. The whole thing was a farce.
I actually asked them, where's the camera? When I'm being handcuffed, where's the camera? He said, what are you talking about? I said, this is absolutely nuts. Who's hiding filming this thing?
Have you found out who made the call?
There was no call.
There was no call. No, there was no domestic disturbance. That's the crazy thing, is they show up and say there's a domestic disturbance call, and there's no call. They just wanted a reason to knock on the door and say, oh, it's no big deal. Come on out here. And then, when you step out your door, they got you.
Yeah.
So they just wanted an excuse to knock on his door and have him feel like, oh, it's not a big deal. And then, of course, finish your story, but come to find out the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, so I step out the door and I'm thrown against a wall and handcuffed and taken to Fort Lauderdale, Broward County Jail. Spent 23 days in Broward County. Didn't have an attorney the whole time.
What were you charged with?
They wouldn't even tell me at the beginning. They didn't know. It was an out-of-state warrant. The charge was titled receiving property under a false pretense. But nobody could tell me what that meant. I didn't see an attorney for 23 days. I was then transferred to North Carolina, where I found out at that point, when I saw an attorney finally, that it was an embezzlement charge. And I'd never embezzled anything from anybody. The attorney finally got me some discovery a couple days later, and I found a sheet of paper, a handwritten receipt in my former business partner's handwriting, with his address, home address on it, that he had taken $22,000 from a client that I'd given him when I exited that company in 2014. So he had embezzled from a client that I'd given him when I left the company 3 years prior to me being arrested. I didn't even know it had happened. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll be out of here in no time. 51 more days. I spent 73 days in 2 different jail cells before I got myself out. And basically, I got myself out. I threatened my attorney.
Was there you had no chance to post bail or anything?
$25,000 cash bond. And remember this, the first 23 days, no attorney. They wouldn't let me access a cell phone even. I didn't have any telephone numbers memorized. Nobody knew where I was at. My kids thought I'd died. I disappeared. Was gone from the face of the earth.
For weeks, right?
Yeah.
Before you made a phone call.
3 weeks plus.
That is just...
Yeah, 3 weeks plus.
I've heard the story 250,000 times because I edited the movie, for goodness sake. And we filmed the story. You got to see the movie if you haven't already. But he tells the story and we tell it in more detail. And we kind of did it in a funny way. You ever see a Drunk History?
Yeah.
Comedy Center. So we kind of did that. So I wanted it to be palpable for people. Because when you're listening to it, you're like, there's no freaking way. There's no way he didn't get an attorney for 3 weeks. There's no way he wasn't able to make a phone call for 3 weeks. They would not even give him his cell phone to get phone numbers so he could make a phone call.
Oh, check this out. Finally, on the 8th day, I saw a judge, the first 8th day, and told him that I hadn't got to use my cell phone, and they were requiring a court order. He's like, I have never written a court order for a cell phone. I'm not going to do it. And he made his mind up. And after that, the bailiff came over to me from the side. He heard the story. He's like, listen, let me go talk to him. So this big, burly bailiff goes behind the podium there and convinces the judge to write a court order that demands them to access my phone for telephone numbers. So the next day, I hand it to the jailer, the court order. They come back that afternoon. I'm like, well, where's the phone? He's like, you're not going to get it. The phone died, and we're just not going to charge it. That's our justice system, boys and girls.
Yep.
So they made the judge write a court order, and then they didn't honor it.
I still have the court order to this day, and that was on that paper that I showed you that I'd written in my diary.
And what's wild about that is you didn't do it. So they're treating this guy like garbage because they think that he's a piece of garbage. And then it turns out, no, he's just a normal guy who served our country and got ramrodded.
Even still, like an embezzlement charge. What do you think do you think that was, do you think that they were lying about the embezzlement charge? And if so, what do you think the reason for them coming to pick you up was?
I honestly don't know the reason. Now, my former partner was a retired pastor, 49 years in the pulpit, 25 years on TV. His son-in-law is a state representative in North Carolina. And I had found out when I'd been in business for a year or so that people either loved him or they hated him. And the guy turned out to be a shyster behind a pulpit. And so they came to him and they interviewed him from the client that made the complaint. This guy convinced this client that I took the money and left the state. This happened 7 months after I'd already been gone, but he was good at what he did. So why did they do that? First of all, the embezzlement charge, because there was a contract between me and a client for a down payment, should have never been anything more than civil. There was no criminal case there at all. Second, they had zero evidence that I was involved or even knew that it had happened. While I'm there, I'm signing documents. They're looking through my bank records. They're looking through everything. There's nothing that shows I took that money because it didn't happen. 73 days. The week before I got out, I caught an infection in that jail, and they didn't treat it for 6 days. And I'm assuming I can say this. It went into my right testicle. I woke up one morning, had one that was the size of an orange, and no treatment. Finally, on the 6th day after I caught that infection, it went into my right ear, and the nurse finally saw me, gave me an antibiotic, said, "You'll get another one tomorrow." And that day, my attorney came to me and said, "Listen, Glenn, you're going to be here for a while, probably another year and a half."
In a jail with no charges filed, or with no...
The charge had been filed. I'd never gone in front of the judge except to read the charge.
Mm-hmm.
There had been no hearing, nothing. But he said, "You're going to be here another year and a half. They have no evidence against you. We've gone through everything. They're not ready to let you go. In about 6 months, more than likely, that time, they'll offer a plea. If you plead not guilty, you'll be here another year, waiting on a trial at least. Or if you can gather up 25 grand, we'll let you go. There's not a bond. You're out of state. You're a flight risk. It's $25,000 cash."
You were living in Florida, right?
Yeah, but this was in North Carolina. They had extradited me to North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did the extradition take?
23 days from Broward County, and then I was in North Carolina. I was in the back of a van for 2 days, handcuffed and shackled in the feet, sitting in the back of a van to go to another jail.
So for 48 hours, you were in a van.
Well, we stopped in Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay.
And spent the night in another jail that looked like a gulag.
Well, it's not that long of a drive. Why did it take 2 days?
Because they were picking other people up to deliver.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, you're just a product at that point.
That must have been so much fun.
Oh, you know what was fun, though? There was a funny story, and I don't think I ever told you this. So I didn't have any telephone numbers. They still hadn't accessed my cell phone. So these two jailers, a man and a woman, black man and black woman, probably mid to late 20s, early 30s. And we're driving, and I just do what Glenn does, and I'm talking to him, and I make friends. And I finally convinced the woman. I said, "Listen, they have not let me access my cell phone. I've got no numbers. I see you're on your Facebook on your phone. Could I ask you to do me a favor?" And she's like, "What?" I said, "Get on your messenger and send a message to Kenny Dietrich."
Oh, my God. He's in the documentary.
He's in the documentary. I said, "Send a message to Kenny Dietrich." Now, he's going to think you're a scam. So here's what I want you to say. Tell him that you've got Glenn Baker in the back of a van, shackled and handcuffed on the way to North Carolina. And he's going to say, "Nah, it's a scam." Tell him, "Glenn told me to tell you that. Do you remember the time when you told some customers to go find Glenn standing underneath a Dodge Neon?" And she did it. And I'm the only one could ever came up with that.
Sure.
He used to make fun of my height all the time. And he told some clients, "Go find Glenn on the other side of this car lot, standing underneath the Dodge Neon. That's how you'll know he's there." And so she told him that. And all of a sudden, I got my first telephone number through a jailer so that I could call somebody when I got to that other jail. But it's one of these stories. It's like, I never would have believed it. I never would have believed that happens in the United States. Man, I'm a middle-aged businessman, never been in trouble, and lost my freedom without any evidence that I'd done anything wrong, only an accusation. And that's today's America. And quite frankly, Phil, that's what it took for me to be woken up out of the matrix. Because up to that point, I thought my government loved me, had my best interest at heart, wouldn't hurt me. I had no idea.
So you were you were talking to one of the jailers that was on their cell phone in the van with you.
In the van.
So you never told me that part of the story. That is some, well, maybe not Nate Cain, James Bond level, but that's pretty slick, man.
That's slick,
I
baby.
like that.
And that's how I
Kenny
got the
Dietrich
first
thing,
number.
That's slick, bro.
That's how I got the first number. And then Kenny called and got my sister's number. So that's how I got number. I never
You never told me that.
I never got them from my phone.
That's such a good part of the story.
I know. I don't know how I didn't think of it.
That's like Timcast exclusive.
That gives whole new context to the joke in the movie about you standing under the Dodge Neon. So now I know.
That's true.
You got to see the movie, y'all. Go
It's
finish
hilarious.
this fight.us. Buy the movie. Watch Kenny Dietrich. That part alone is worth
And I'm glad
$11.
And I'm glad that you guys did the movie the way you did, because otherwise I would have left the movie completely pissed off and unsatisfied. But there's a lot of comedy that's spread throughout the movie, and it's good.
Good.
So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's how
I don't
it all
remember the
began.
question because you can talk for an hour about
I know,
nothing.
I'm trying to piece together the story. I'm looking for what the actual you said that there was the accusation from someone else that was probably because of your former business partner. And I'm wondering, I'm trying to figure out if there was a pretense that you were arrested under, or if there was something that they were actually interested in that was beyond what you were told.
I wish it was that interesting. I wish I had some kind of crazy knowledge that somebody was trying to get to. At the end of the day, what I think happened is this pastor embezzled money from these people and convinced them that I had done it because I was out of the state already. He was just trying to get out from being in trouble.
I guess what I'm looking for is some reason for the both the Broward County and the North Carolina Justice Departments to behave in the way that they did, right? Because if a story says, if you're dealing with someone that has a negative interaction with the police, if there's one jurisdiction that is doing something that is wrong or is somehow behaving outside the law, that's understandable. For two different jurisdictions to be,
Wasn't that the weird thing that they were like in cohorts together against the guy that didn't do anything?
Yeah, that's what. And usually, I would imagine there would be a story that would be told. One would be kind of unaware of the motivation of the one that's actually looking to prosecute, right? So it was North Carolina that really wanted to get their hands on you. And I imagine Broward County would be unaware or uninterested in what it is that North Carolina was after. And so for them to show up with a SWAT team at your house on a domestic and then wrap you up when there was clearly no one else inside the house.
Yep.
You live alone, there's no one there. If someone calls in a domestic to actually be the impetus to get you into custody, I'm just trying to figure out, or I'm wondering what it is, or wondering if there was something else that was going on, or what how it was that you could get both of these two separate jurisdictions to behave in such nefarious ways.
I wish I knew the answer to that. And what I think I've seen is that stuff like this happens way more than we realize.
Oh yeah.
That it's par for the course.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
yeah.
I think this is happening every day, and not everybody can make a movie about it. I think that's just the crazy thing, is that he's just one of a million people that are telling the story. I think this is happening all the time. And look, I'm not trying to dunk on the police. We need them, and they need to be trained correctly. I think that's one of the biggest problems. The whole defund the police thing was such a crime because police need more training. You can go through like a basic, right? And I have never gone through it. So don't quote me on. Yeah. So they go through a training and then they're like, go out into the wild. And depending on where you are, it could be a lot less wild. There could be a lot more wild, but you get jaded really quick and they don't get enough training. I think we need to.
They certainly don't get enough training on the Constitution. In fact,
That's
I
true,
would
too.
say that
A lot of times they don't know the law.
I'd say they don't. They don't know. I think a lot of them don't know the authority that the Constitution has over every other law. And so we see this problem in the military too, We see this problem in the military. We see it in anywhere where you have lines of authority, right? It's in the FBI. It's in the local police, the sheriff's departments, everywhere, which is that people get used to obeying orders.
Yeah.
And they just go ahead and do it. In fact, there have been studies that have been done on this after World War II. There's a famous one, I can't remember the name of it, but where they had a bunch of students at the university. There were two kind of famous tests, and I remember learning this in my psychology class. But one of them was really interesting. They got a bunch of students to pretend they were hooked up to electrodes, and you remember the story, right? And they had the teachers, turn the volume up on the electricity, and of course the kids were all acting and everything. But there was a mark on there that said "Don't go beyond," and when they were told to go beyond it, they did.
They did. Just
80% of them.
Just so long as authority said it was okay.
That's right.
The authority figure said, no, it's okay for you to do this.
And afterwards, these teachers had PTSD.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't understand why they did that either.
Yeah.
And of course, the kids were screaming and passing out and all, totally going.
I love that.
But it showed a
crazy
very,
experiment.
very important thing. They were trying to understand how
I
Nazi
believe they
guards.
stopped. I think that this experiment, they said they couldn't do it anymore after that happened. I'm not positive.
No, it was absolutely never allowed again because it did harm psychologically to these teachers. So it's kind of crazy. But the other one that was similar was they had two sets of groups of students that were from the same class. And one of them were the jailers, and the other one were the prisoners, and they were like locked in for like a period of time. And they found certain behaviors that developed in this environment, and so I think there's a real threat of that anytime you have authority. And so that's why I think it's important for anybody who's in a position of authority. Number one, there needs to be consequences if they abuse that authority, and it should be very severe, so that it puts a check on them, so they think, oh, I don't want to overstep and violate this person's rights. And the problem is that in the case of what happened to Glenn, absolutely the FBI should have investigated that for deprivation of rights under color of law. And in some cases of where there's video or there's it becomes a national spectacle or something, they will get involved. But what about the FBI when they do it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Nobody
goes
after them.
Has there been? Your lawyer wasn't interested in suing, or you don't have a lawyer that's interested in suing?
He was a plod.
Well, yeah, but so I mean, fair enough. But you haven't. You've got a movie out. Have you been in contact with any other lawyers interested in suing Broward County or suing North Carolina? I mean, I imagine if this story, there's got to be plenty of evidence, and this seems like there's all kinds of room to at least attempt to get some kind of compensation for the illegal illegal actions of a what amounts to small town abuse of power.
Oh, it absolutely is. I was in a position when I got home. I'd lost everything. I'd lost my home, lost my car. It was repoed while I was gone. 80% of my life insurance agency was gone because of a financial accusation. And the night after I got home, that infection that I told you about went into my right eye and destroyed my cornea. So I'm blind in my right eye for a year. For a year, I didn't care whether I lived or died. Now, I'm telling you, I wasn't suicidal. I was just defeated. I was defeated. I looked and talked with a few attorneys about it. I didn't really want to raise a bunch of Cain until it was dismissed. And it took them 3 years to raising Cain.
There he is right there.
It took them 3 years before they dismissed the charge with prejudice. They had nothing anyway.
Okay, so they dismissed it with prejudice then.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So that means nothing can be brought if you don't know, if it's dismissed with prejudice, that means that they can't bring the charges anymore, or this is all just a garbage prosecution.
Yeah. It's gone. But the attorneys that I did speak to had told me, the North Carolina attorneys especially, that the way their system is set up and the laws are set up in North Carolina, if you get out of jail alive, you really have no recourse. They've done their job. There's nothing they can do.
Well, yeah, for a defense attorney, but you don't have the ability to.
Oh, I was talking to people who could sue them. I just went crazy, brain dead on that term. But yeah, the people that could sue them, and we're used to suing the government, and nobody would pick it up. But on their behalf, I was defeated, and I didn't try real hard. I just spent time healing. And I do think from the release of this movie, and it has nothing to do with why we've done it, but somebody's going to see this and say, you know what? I think I can help.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean and I mean hopefully someone watching will know someone or something like that, because the story that you outlined, it does seem like that kind of abuse of power is ripe for a lawsuit, and this is the United States, where there is no shortage of lawyers. There are plenty of lawyers in the U.S. and
too many.
I would imagine there'd be someone motivated to. Especially, considering what seems like such an open and shut case.
Well, you would think so. Broward County is completely corrupt anyway. But think about this. Being held for 23 days, not knowing why you were being held, not allowed to see an attorney, don't see a judge for 8 days when the judge does give you a court order.
You couldn't see an attorney for almost 3 weeks, huh? You never had the option of seeing an attorney.
I had nobody to call. Had no money. Couldn't get a hold of an attorney on my own. And then when the judge gave the court order, they wouldn't access my cell phone, so I couldn't get it that way.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.